So fine. The last class we were studying about the copolymers types. I mean, what's the difference between homopolymer and copolymers? So, like each one has different properties and characteristics. It's not that we have to go ahead with the alternative copolymer for certain applications, or a random copolymer is preferred, or kind of craft copolymer. Each one has some special characteristics. Say, for example, there are some black copolymer and craft copolymers are used for drug delivery sector, and the random copolymer or alternative copolymers are widely used for some mechanical properties where your strength and modulus is as a major concern. So likewise, I mean, the things are means copolymers have been categorized to different things. So the one of the example we'll see now, like difference between the homopolymer and copolymer, how the properties are, varied. Okay. So these are some typical example for copolymers. Sorry, homopolymers, Teflon. I mean, polytetrafluoroethylene and polythene and polyvinyl chloride. Okay, and yeah, if you see the properties of homopolymer, and depends on the single monomer, like either ethylene or the kind of Teflon. In the case of Teflon, like carbon tetrafluoride and sulfuride, and if you see the PVC, and depends on the vinyl chloride, etc. And this is one of the example of copolymer, styrene butadiene rubber, and this unit is belongs to styrene, and the second unit is belongs to the butadiene content. And this copolymer can be, produced by using various polymerization techniques like a solution polymerization and bulk polymerization, etc. And each one gives a different molecular structures like alternative copolymer or random copolymer, etc. So this styrene butadiene, or the SBR rubber, is being widely used in tire sector. I mean the tire manufacturing. Okay, and but if you see the properties, you can able to fine tune the tailor-made properties with the help of changing their molar ratio or the molecular weight of these individual monomeric units. Okay, so for example, if you increasing the styrene content, and the tensile strength will increase. On the other hand, the elimination or the abrasion resistance will be reduced. Okay. So why? Because of plastics. I mean, the styrene is usually, gives some rigidity, or since it is plastic based, monomeric units. And butadiene usually gives you the rubbery nature. That's the reason if you increasing the butadiene content in copolymer of SBR based copolymer, what you'll observe is that you will have to sacrifice the strength and modulus. Of course, on the other hand, you will have the increases in elimination or the abrasion resistance. Okay. So it's all like you will have to, sacrifice or fine tune their properties to have the excellent performance of your tires or the rubber product where you are planning to manufacture or the fabrication. And on the other hand, we do have some functionalities. Like if you see any kind of polymer, they have some chemical groups, and on top of that, like apart from carbon and hydrogen, you do find some of the other functional groups like alcohol or the acid or amine, etc. Okay, so each one has different characteristics and the properties. Say, for example, if you introduce some sort of alcohol or the amine groups or the acid, that means you are changing the charges or the polarity of your component. I mean the polymer. Phases. Okay. So once you change the polarity component, I mean the solubility characteristic will change. Of course, the mechanical properties like adhesion and kind of other, properties will also be varied. Okay. So just this is very simple. Like if you have one functionality considered as a monofunctional, and if you have two functional, like each side, then you consider as a bifunctional group of these corresponding polymers. Okay. So likewise, we have a different functional group, isocyanate as well as amine, etc. Okay. This actually where we have to be, important factors to be considered in case of like if you're doing some copolymerization, etc., to enhance certain polymers, okay, certain properties. In that case, like your monomer or your oligomer or the monomer, solid polymer, homologous polymer should have certain functional group so that they can start to react with the second monomer where they are planning to have some additional, characteristics or the properties. Okay. Say, for example, if you see the polyurethane based, polymers. Like they used to have some sort of pre-polymers first. I mean, with the help of isocyanate and alcohol, and that terminated NH2 again. That will be connected by using the bifunctional monomers. Say, for example, a diamine or some sort of alcohol or glycerol, etc. Okay. Okay, all right. So you can see here some of the polymeric structure of, commodity polymers like polyethylene, PVC, and tetrafluoroethylene, PP, etc. And CMPMA, and this is thermoset polymer, phenol formaldehyde, and polystyrene based one. And yeah, this is like a nylon 66 and PET-based polymers and polycarbonate. I hope everyone knows, right? Nylon 6 I mean, the 6 corresponding to what? The first 6 and the second 6. Fine. So there are two important thermal phenomena you might have observed or studied in the third semester. That is very important. TG and the glass transition temperature and the melting temperature. So if you see the TG of, glass transition, it exhibits for all the polymers. Say, for example, you can find it in amorphous polymer, crystalline polymer, or thermoplastic polymer, or thermoset, elastomers, etc. But if you see the melting temperature, it exhibits only in the crystalline polymers. Okay? That, let's see why is it so exactly. So what is TG exactly? So at the particular temperature, the TG temperature, below that polymer will behave as a glassy or the brittle nature. Okay? And beyond that particular temperature, the TG temperature, the polymer will behave as a ductile or the rubbery nature. Okay? So that is called glass transition temperature. The temperature at which a polymer changes from brittle to ductile or glassy to a rubber. Okay? Or what's happening in the molecular level, like the amorphous region randomness presence in the polymer chains will start to move at that particular temperature, which is called glass transition temperature. So these are melting temperature. It exhibits only in the crystalline polymers. At melting temperature, all the crystalline segments would start to break down, and as a result, they'll start to melt, and subsequently they'll start to flow. Okay? Yeah, of course, once it started to flow, that means you can apply the pressure and you can give some permanent shape for the melted polymer, according to the design of your product. Okay? So why TG and TM is very important factor. You can look at here what's happening with the specific volume. Okay, you have a three different, type of polymers like a glass, semicrystalline, and crystalline solid. You can see here, the crystalline, completely crystalline polymer. Okay? At TG and TM, there is no significant changes in the specific volume. But in case of semi-crystalline or the amorphous or the glass-based one, you can see the increases in the specific volume. So what's happening? When the material, either semi-crystalline or the amorphous or the crystalline polymers, once it is melted, the volume, how much it is getting increasing. So that defines how much pressure you'll have to apply for giving the permanent shape for your product, etc. Okay. So now you must be knowing what is a structure property relationship. Say, for example, surface functionality. As I told you that if you have some bifunctional group or the trifunctional group, or if you have no functional group, that means your polymer is completely non-polar, or there is no polarity group presence in your polymer system. That means the charge is zero. As a result, they cannot do react with those kind of polar substrates. Say, for example, metal or any other ceramics-based substrate. You might have seen, most of the polymer-based product, they used to have some addition with some metal substrate. Okay, so in that case, like if you have no functional group, that means your polymer cannot get stick with those kind of metal substrate. And yeah, that is one aspect. You are going to, if you know the surface functionality, you can predict some of the properties, and of course thermal, factors like a TG and TM. If you know the TG and TM, that will be good where you can use your polymer for having high strength like brittle nature, or if you want to use some sort of polymer, usually which you need kind of highly laminated kind of applications. Then you have to, you should know where exactly the TG of your material, I mean polymer or the melting temperature of it. Once you know that, of course, you can predict the physical mechanical properties, of course, by looking at the structure or by looking at the amorphous content and the crystalline percentage, you can, tell that your material can be used for optical transparency, etc. And of course, the processability, as I told you that the specific volume, how much it increases. So that comes from your, either crystalline polymer or the crystalline material or the amorphous material or the semi-crystalline. Basically, this processability or the phobia here, the total terms usually it's called as a rheology, okay? And then biodegradation and recycling capabilities, etc. Of course, if your compound, the material, polymeric material is completely filled, means you cannot recycle it at all. And yeah, biodegradation, if you have kind of thermoplastic polymer and if you have some sort of amine-based functional group, that means you can do, they can help you for biodegradation, because amine is usually of amino acid like functional group. As a result, the bacteria or the virus, they can start to interact more with your material. As a result, the material will start to degrade. So altogether, if you know all these basic, ideas or the information about your material polymer which you are going to use, then you can predict the property, and that relationship is called structure relationship. Okay. So now, getting ideas straight away for designing any polymer product. So you should know all these things. Some factor or the figure. Once you know the mechanical strength as well as the molecular weight. Okay? And then if you know the crystallinity, then you can able to predict those crossing density. Of course, TG and TM is also important to have those idea about their kind of transition of brittle to ductile nature. Okay. So now you see some of the structure property relationships. Okay. So once you are increasing the molecular weight of your base material or the polymers, what will happen? The tensile strength will increase. Okay. Of course, you will have very good modulus, strength, etc. You may have to sacrifice the lamination. Of course, the other hand, the processing characteristics. Say, for example, you are increasing the molecular weight. What's happening? The melt viscosity will also increase. Okay? That means even you apply high temperature, the viscosity will be pretty much high, because they have got a very high molecular weight and which are highly entangled. So why it is so important? To go deep into the molecular weight, because if the viscosity is so high, the polymer will be very difficult for processing. Okay, means they will be melting at very high temperature. Okay, and even after that high temperature, the solidification will be a big issue, because you'll have very few minutes to give the final shape by your product. And yeah, once the difficulty is something like you have to process your polymer at high temperature, means you'll have to spend a lot of money, energy, etc. Of course, if the viscosity is too low, that means the extruded material or the the processed polymer material won't hold together. That means the final shape, whatever you are giving, that will not be that geometry will not remain forever. That shape or sizes will be changed due to the solidification issues as well as the swelling. So that means the it's not that you all the way, you every time you increase the molecular weight for improving the property or etc. So it's not like that. So you should have those kind of optimum molecular weight where you have those kind of optimum melt viscosity to get rid of those processing issues as well as the finishing, product finishing issues. So again, you can see here, some of the examples where you have a different structures, like one is thermoset-based structures, which are heavily cross-linked, and elastomers, which are lightly cross-linked, and thermoplastic elastomer, there is no cross-linking. Okay, and this picture is nothing but the dynamic mechanical properties of the material, different polymers. Okay? So you have a x-axis temperature and y-axis is kind of modulus, log modulus and storage modulus, how much the energy which was lost during the dynamic testing. So you can see here, thermoset based one, like completely heavily cross-linked system. There is no loss of energy. And elastomers, of course, they have lost little energy, and thermoplastic I mean, that means there is no cross-linked network structure process in the material. Okay. You can see here there was a significant, phase transformation was happening between the TG and the TM. Okay, because that means there are some molecular changes is happening over the, with the increasing of temperature from lower to higher. That means TG to TM. So this is what the effect of cross-linking, and you can also see here the effect of crystallinity. Okay? If you have 100% crystalline polymer, that means you don't find any kind of changes in modulus at TG and TM. And if there is a changes in the crystallinity, say for example 50 as well as the amorphous region, you can see here, you can find the clear and distinct transition at TG as well as TM because it has got kind of semi-crystalline material. But of course, if you have the amorphous, as I told you, that amorphous material will not exhibit melting temperature. That's the reason, like you can find the transition, phase transformation is happening at TG, but in case of melting, TG melting temperature, you don't find any kind of changes in the models. So basically, this concept is comes under the category of viscoelasticity, okay, or structure dependence on the crystallinity or the structure, different structures. And I hope you know all these, like crossing density. What is crossing density, guys? Pradeep, do you know about that? What is crossing density?
Yes, sir.
What is crossing density?
So it's no idea, sir.
Nothing. See, cross-link density means you have a rubber and then we are adding some cross-linking agent or the vulcanization agent like sulfur or metal oxide. So if you increase the, quantity of those vulcanization agent, what will happen? The degree of cross-linking will be increased. Okay, that is called the density. How much network per unit length is called. Cross-link density. So more the vulcanization agent and more will be the cross-link density. So if you increase the cross intensity, what will happen? Your mechanical properties, especially the modulus, will be increased. Okay. All right. So here again, so we are seeing different curves. Different samples which are like highly cross-linked, and if you are increasing the crossing density, what's happening for the log modulus? ER, that means storage modulus. And if you increasing the molecular weight, then what's happening? So altogether, like with increasing the crossing density, you can see the increases in storage modulus. At certain point, of course, you don't see any changes in the modulus. Almost all like it's getting very black shade, okay, which are highly cross-linked. And yeah, the increases in molecular weight as well. If you increasing the molecular weight, again, the storage modulus will also be enhanced. Okay. This is the overall picture. The mechanical properties of polymers, like what is dynamic mechanical analysis and what is static mechanical analysis. This you must be aware of all this, like plastic deformation and the elastic deformation, etc. Okay. So brittle material will not have those kind of elastic deformation all the way. Immediately they will start to break. And in case of elastomer, yeah, of course, so you will have a pretty much high elongation. More than 300% elongation. And these are all about the static mechanical test and the dynamic mechanical test, where you're gonna increase the temperature and then simultaneously you're gonna carry out those mechanical tests, either of tensile strength, or 3-point bending moment, or the impact strength, etc. So you can find here, if your material is kind of semi-crystalline, you can see here at the glassy phase, since it is a brittle, you can see the modulus is pretty high. And once it is crosses the TG, you can see the drop down, modulus drop down was happening here, which is called a leathery region. Okay. Again, it's getting very pressure, which is called double region. Once it reaches the melting temperature, the melting region, all the crystalline segments will start to break down. As a result, the modulus will reach to zero, or the sudden fall in the modulus, which is called melting temperature. Okay. So now this is one of the concept, like real-time application, where you can see exactly see the structure property relationship. Okay. So you have seen the rubbers, nitrile rubber, acrylonitrile butadiene rubber, which is widely used for oil seal application. Okay. because why is it so? Because if you see the structure, nitrile rubber has bearing cyanide groups, okay, so which is highly polar. And if you see the, chemical composition of any oils, okay, kind of petroleum oil or any edible oil, etc. Okay, it it has the combination of, as much as carbon and hydrogen, and they have got a very minor amount of nitrogen, oxygen, and sulfur. Okay, so what the structure is playing here is that polar and non-polar, if we mix, they will not, mix each other at all, right? So it's just for example, oil and water, okay? And water is polar and oil is non-polar. If we mix together, they will not mix at all at any, irrespective of temperature or the mixing time or the mixing speed, etc. The same concept is also applying here. Nitrile rubber is polar and oil is non-polar. So that's the reason they are choosing nitrile rubber to have those kind of resistance with the, oil. Okay? Of course, nitrile rubber also has very good dynamic mechanical properties. Okay, even at temperature of around 80 degrees or so, it can bear more amount of oil resistance, etc. And apart from those things, like they also been used in the types of belts, hoses, and O-rings, etc. So now you're seeing different structures of biopolymers like starch, cellulose, and phytosan and collagen 3 and 2, etc. So now tell me why these polymers are preferred for biomedical applications. Any idea? So biomedical applications means they can be used as a tablet, they can be used as a bandage, the scaffold, and they can be used as kind of surgery sutures. So why is it so? So now just look at the structure and tell me, because I explained you, right, for why the nitrile rubber exhibit oil resistance. You can also find some of the keywords: DNA, peptide, and amino acid mimicked biopolymers. And you do find some keywords here: biocompatible as well as biodegradable. So can you make out now why these structures are preferred for biomedical sectors? So look, any material, if you want to use them for a biomedical sector, the two things are very important. One is biocompatible and biodegradation. Biocompatible means they should, they should like each other. Material and living cells. Okay, if they are toxic, if they don't like cells, that means we cannot use them. Okay, so the best thing first, they should like each other. The material and the cells, living cells in our body. And second thing, of course, even if they don't degrade, that will be problematic. Okay, because we are consuming or we are implanting something, or we are implanting on the wound, etc. Okay, that means over the period of time, the material should degrade. If they don't degrade, it's going to be an issue. Okay, because you are carrying those, additional weight throughout your life. Okay, so that doesn't make sense. So these two things are very important, like biodegradation as well as biocompatibility. So if you see your, tissue or the organ, the chemical composition of your tissue and organ, they may be having some amino acid and peptide and DNA. The sequences may be different, and the structure could maybe different. Different amino acid, different peptides, etc. Okay. And on top of that, they will be having some cells like endothelial cells, stem cells, and in case of that, bone cells, you may find osteoblasts. And if it is like in the skin, you can find fibroblasts, etc. Different cell lines. So on top of that, you may also find some biopolymers like chitosans, etc. Collagen. So if you can mimic those corresponding or the targeted peptide or the amino acid or the DNA sequences, what will happen? You can easily manipulate their properties. You can without looking much, actually, you can say that the material can be biocompatible as well as biodegradable, because we are exactly mimicking those respective amino acid sequences or the DNA, structures, etc. Okay? So if you see most of the material, which are used in the biomedical sectors, they used to mimic this collagen type 3 or chitosan, which has a different molecular orientation, and cellulose and starch, because they know that this collagen type 3 or type 2 and etc. They are in the cartilage tissue or your skin tissue or heart tissue, etc. Okay, so why not to take directly collagen and fabricate some biomedical product and use them for terms of purpose? Because if we mimic those structure, obviously they will do all those jobs. They can be used as a biocompatible as well as biodegradable, etc. All right. So overall, if you see the polymer, advantage and disadvantage. Advantage, of course, they're lightweight and strong, durable, and very cheap and easy to manufacture. And there are two main, problem with this polymers, because they are not all the polymers are not biodegradable, and as a result, they'll end up with producing large number of waste. The sustainability issue. Okay. All right. So I'm stopping here for today class. So the next class we will start about the basics of nanoscience and nanotechnology, and then we will get into nanocomposite concept. Okay. Yeah. So far, any questions? I have to find here. Yeah. So far, any doubt, etc.
Yes, sir. I'm not understanding concept. Sir, I'm not like the cross-linked density. I'm not understanding probably what
Yeah.
to tell.
Yeah.
But I'm not understanding cross-linked density part of this. Explain again, sir.
Yeah. I'll explain you again. What is skewed elastomers or the cross-linked elastomers? You are doing cross-linking into the elastomer chains, right? Each chains. Okay. So if I crossing, the two polymer chains with the single bridges, single cross-linking agents, that means you can say that is lightly cross-linked. Okay. But if I bridge those two chains with the multiple cross-linking agents, say for example, like four, bridges, if I make between two polymer chains, that means I am putting more amount of cross-linking agents to make sure that the two chains are not slipping each other. Okay. So as a result, if I keep on increasing those doses of cross-linking agent, the sulfur or the metal oxide, what will happen? The chains, the whole polymer, elastomers or the polymer, they'll become very rigid. Okay. So are you getting me now? Hello, Rudy.
Yeah, yes, sir.
That's what. So as a result, the density will increasing, right? The crossing density. The number of crossing per unit. Per unit means between two chains. So you assume that is happening throughout your polymer chains. The polymer, your chains, the total polymer will be having like more than 1,000 chains. Are you getting it, or do you understand?
Yeah, sir. But
Okay.
I think
that is called, that is called crossing density.
one more is the amino acid mimicked by polymers. I'm not understanding.
Yeah.
What is again, sir? This thing.
Amino acid means protein. What is protein?
I'm not mimicked by polymers, sir. This is an amino acid mimicked polymer. What do you mean this thing?
Mimicked means you are replicating the structure.
Oh, yeah, right. This thing. Okay.
You have to say, for example, protein has a different amino acid combination, right? So what they do usually, suppose if I want to use some material for skin regeneration, first what they do first, they used to study the what is the protein presence on your skin actually. So then they'll mimic the same structure with the help of our various fermentation technique or the biomedical technology. Okay. So first, then they'll mimic the structure or they replicate the protein structure, and subsequently the structure will be fabricated as either drug delivery carrier or the implant or the scaffold, etc., to do that same job.
Yeah, right, sir. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
Yeah.
What is your doubt?
Metal rubber has oil resistance property, right?
Yeah.
So can you explain why and what are the practical applications which we can apply it, in which we can apply it?
Yeah, wherever you are storing the oils, if you don't close your oils, I mean, either petrols or any kind of edible oils, with the help of this kind of, I mean, rubber-based seals, they'll start to leak, right?
Yes, sir.
And your motor, I mean, wherever you're using motors, even two-wheeler, four-wheeler, etc., there should be the cap, I mean, which are made up of nylon rubber. If the cap is not, I mean, oil resistant, they start to leak easily.
So basically, it's oil prevention, oil leak prevention in for applications.
Yeah, you can say leakage or resistance, both are same, right?
Can
Gupta,
say interchangeably. Can say.
no, I'm not good. What do you say?
So leak, we have lateral level oil resistance. It has properties, so it's used for leakage prevention. How come it?
Yeah, you can say either leakage or resistance. If the resistance is not that great, then leakage will be there.
And how does it show oil resistance? That part I didn't get.
How does
What?
it show me?
How how does it resist? Why does it has oil resistance?
Yeah, I told you red polar and non-polar combinations. Water and oil doesn't mix well at all, right? That means immiscible. They both are immiscible.
Okay, like dissolves like that part. Okay, understood.
Yeah. So that's a result. The diffusion will not happen at all. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Anything else? Okay. See you then tomorrow.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Yeah.